Welcome to the AI Accelerator Podcast, where we turn AI from a corporate buzzword into an unfair advantage. I'm Matt Zembruski, and this is the show for leaders who are done talking about AI and ready to dive in and execute. Today, I'm joined by Matt Sims, who's a global leader in Lean, Six Sigma, cultural transformation. Matt spent more than 25 years leading operational excellence and continuous improvement cultures around the world. From mailroom to the boardroom, his career has been shaped by resilience, curiosity, and a deep respect for people. Labeled as an underachiever at school and navigating anxiety and mental health challenges, Matt's journey is one of quiet determination and growth. Today, he's a lean master black belt, author of Building the Bridge to Inspirational Leadership, host of the Ever So Lean podcast, streamed in 118 countries, very impressive, and globally recognized voice in leadership, learning, and improvement. Matt, welcome to the AI Accelerator Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So excited to dive in, Matt. I have a lot of questions. I have a strong background in Lean and Agile as well, not nearly as deep as yours goes, but I'm excited to dive down the rabbit hole together. So let's start with a little bit more about your background for our audience. You know, your journey from being labeled as an underachiever to becoming a global leader in Lean and leadership is very powerful. Obviously, there was an internal drive there. There was something that there was some initial spark that happened. Can you take us back to those early years and sort of what was the shifting point for you, and what really shaped your launching pad to take off and move on in that direction to where you are today?
Do you know, I think it's an internal passion to prove people wrong. If I'm honest, being told that I wouldn't achieve much from school sort of left me with this, you know, I can do it. I know I can do it feeling inside. We had 4 different sets at school, and set 1 was for the clever people. Set 4 was for the people that were not quite so clever. And I was in set 4 for nearly everything. And straight away, you're labeled as somebody who's not as good as somebody else. And it sort of lit this fire within me to drive forward and not accept that I am where I am, and accept that I can do whatever I choose to do. And when I left school at 16, as you could back then, and I went out to the working world on frontline roles. And very quickly, I found myself, without even knowing I was doing it, I found myself trying to find the most efficient ways of working. I was saving time here and there without even knowing that it was Lean that I was practicing. And then I was working through the post office. I was delivering mail out on the streets, and I'd done that for a number of years. And at that time, the organization were going to go on the stock market. And at that point, they brought in continuous improvement, or world-class manufacturing as it was. And that was the first time in my life that I'd actually done something that was academic, that I was like, wow, I get this. It gets me. And I was able to explain it to other people in a meaningful way. And I was able to deliver results from it. And that was the catalyst for a 25-year career that never waned or dwindled in terms of passion and excitement for continuous improvement.
That's fantastic, Matt. What a great story. It's inspiring just to hear it. And I love how you just followed yourself and your own heart, your own direction, and then it just led you into where you were naturally meant to be. And it's just it's beautiful. Let's talk about Lean a little bit more. A lot of people think about, a lot of listeners of this podcast may not be as familiar with Lean as you are. And a lot of people think, oh, Lean, I guess that's just like tools and efficiency. And you mentioned like saving time and so forth. From your perspective, what's the real role of people and culture in sustained high performance?
Yeah, so Lean in itself is about developing people, developing cultures, developing people, teaching them to question the status quo and improve things. And it's not massive, monumental changes. We're talking about small little changes here, there, and everywhere, every single day in the processes that you work in. And those 2 or 3 seconds that you might save every single time you do a process, they just grow and they add up, as everybody does this over a day, a week, a month, a year. And that's Lean. It's just about removing waste from processes and improving the way that we work. And I think any organization or any individual that goes into continuous improvement with the focus of trying to save money, they are destined to fail. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. You need to go into it with the attitude of, we are going to improve the well-being and the way people work, and we're going to improve the lives of the people we are responsible for. So that's both employees and customers.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so important. And I share an equal passion. It's people centric. It's about people. People are, we're all humans in these companies and organizations doing the work. And you talk a lot about manufacturing. Matt, can you provide some examples about how the transformation over the course of your career? What are some examples, maybe one or two, of situations where, sort of paint the before and after picture, like before you were there, or before lean was there, before there was this conscious transformation there, and then where did it get to? Like, what were they struggling with, and where did they land?
Yeah, so lots of the environments that my career began in are very manual environments. So they are human beings doing repetitive tasks over and over again. And people don't go to work with the deliberate intent of, I'm going to do a rubbish job today. Well, look, I've never met many that do that. Most people want to go to work, do a good job, be praised, earn their money, and go home satisfied and feeling rewarded. And the problem with manual tasks is everybody does them. Everybody does them in a slightly different way. People get tired. People have emotions. People have lives that impact how they work. And the output of those tasks can become variable. The quality of the output, how long it takes, lots of things can vary. So I've worked in those environments where the manual environment has been the predominant environment that we've worked within. So creating tools and methods that help people stick to a standard have been really, really sort of a positive part of what I've done. And one example would be where I worked with one organization where there was a line of people, say 8 or 9 people, and they were placing objects on a conveyor belt that was running past them. And it was really important that they paced the rate at which they placed the items on there, because they needed to be at an even spacing, because a little bit further down the belt, there'll be another individual that would read the labels on these items and then decide which way they need to go. Whereas if the items were too close together, they would get to that individual and they couldn't keep up because the brain couldn't read the labels fast enough. Whereas equally, if they were too spaced out, the person would be standing around waiting for work to come to them. So we developed like a musical metronome that sort of sets the pace at which we work. But it was a green sort of LED light that sat above the belt, and it very, very subtly pulsed. And you could set the rate at which the pulse light was going. So if you wanted an item placed on 1 every 2 seconds, you'd set it to a 2-second rate, and then you could see all the arms moving in unison as they were placing the items on the bed. It was like synchronized swimming. It was absolutely fascinating to watch. And that for me was a monumental change. Something really, really tiny, wasn't very expensive. It was like something you'd make at school with a science kit. But it just gave people that visual indicator of when to do what they needed to do. Because ultimately, previously, those people would have been told they're not going at the right rate. But how do they know? It would be like driving a car with no dashboard and then you get done for speeding. Like, how do you know you're going too fast if you don't have a speedo? So I think that's a really good example of making life easier for people.
Yeah, what I love about that is that you start with the people, Matt. It's not about like, oh, let's just be this like smart person on the side of the room and try to like fix the process or whatever. You're thinking about the people, and that's really important because you're also obviously a very creative thinker, because it takes a lot of creativity and innovation to go in there. You didn't know what the solution was when you walked in. It wasn't like, oh, let me pull my lean book out of my back pocket and go figure it out. So you had to talk about the I guess the process that you go through as an experienced lean practitioner. Do you go in and observe for a little while? You interact with the people, and then you brainstorm with them? Do you collaborate with them to come up with the solutions? How did you come up with that? Because it's a brilliant solution that obviously worked really well.
Yeah, so I think the problem with it, when I was younger and I was really keen to move up the corporate ladder, I wouldn't engage with people. I'd go in there with the attitude of, I'm the lean team. I swing in like the SAS. I'm going to solve this problem. And I didn't take the people on the journey with me. And I'd go down and I'd give them solutions to problems that I perceived that they had. And the problem was those people have been doing that job for a number of years. They knew those processes inside out. And all of a sudden, this young guy's coming in with all this passion and energy and telling me that I'm doing it wrong and I now need to do it this way. And as you can imagine, the adoption and the sustainment of these countermeasures was a bit of a struggle because people just didn't do it. And it wasn't until I've been doing this for 10 or 15 years before I learned the people side is, in fact, the most important part of change. It's the biggest variable you're ever going to have are people. And the solution I just explained to you just then was all built around going down, observing the work happening call it at the Gemba, at the place where the work happens. We was watching what they were doing. And I just said to people, talk to me about what your biggest bugbear is. Talk to me about how would you improve it? You know, tell me, how would you do this? What was the biggest pain in the butt that you had last night? And they would talk me through and tell me their problems. And I might have had an idea of a solution. I might have been sitting there thinking, yeah, we need to regulate the pace. How do we regulate the pace? But it's kind of like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. I want them to come up with the solution because they're more likely to own it going forward if it's come from them. It was a real collaborative piece working with them to find. We tried sound, but obviously you can imagine this beep going every 2 seconds in your ear. People didn't like it. And we knew that wouldn't work, but we had to go through the process of people trying it and coming to that conclusion themselves rather than being told that won't work, we can't do it. Because it's all about giving people that freedom to be scientists, to experiment and find different ways of working.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love how you did that in a collaborative fashion, because then that gets into change management. And I think about this all the time. I work with a lot of professionals, and we do training and transformation and so forth. And when you can see transformation happen, it doesn't start with you as the person who might have more experience. It really starts with them and allowing them to experiment and practice. And just as you did there, let them come up with their own solutions.
Yeah. The thing is, though, when you do the theory, so when you study continuous improvement or lean or Six Sigma, whatever it is you're studying, you learn the tools, you learn the methods, and you learn the frameworks. It doesn't teach you the people element. And you don't really learn that until you've had some real disasters and you learn from it. And you know, even the best solutions I've ever done have had disasters within them, whether I haven't engaged people correctly or I've made the mistake of thinking this worked in the UK, we're now going to roll it out in the States in exactly the same way. When there are cultural differences, our equipment differences, the expectations are different with any country in the world. So I think it's all about learning and understanding people is the real key to it.
Very true. Very true. Let's talk about technology and how that's changed over the course of your career. And now there's been tech changes. The pace of change puts pressure on an organization, right? It puts pressure on people, and the pace of change globally has been escalating, especially with new technology and with AI and everything. How has technology impacted how you interact with companies these days, and how you really effectively see sort of change management and transformation happening?
I think the expectation now is immediate, isn't it? We don't have patience anymore. Everybody wants it on demand right now. Don't have time to wait. And I think back to when I first started on the post, everything was manual. The letters would come in manual bundles, and you have to put them into pigeonholes in the right order for the roads. And then you would load them into a bag, and you'd go out and carry that bag and get the bundles out. And then it was lots of manual, so many opportunities for mistakes, opportunities for defects to occur. Whereas when I left Royal Mail sort of 10, 11 years ago, the company had moved to they called it walk sorted letters. So the letters were coming into the delivery offices in order of which they would go into the slots. So they'd already started to move forward with technology. And we were amazed by that. That was like, wow, this is incredible. And when I left that organization and went to Amazon, actually, which is the total other end of the spectrum, I was blown away by the technology and the way they were using conveyor belts to convey things around massive warehouses. They had scanners that clipped to your hand so you could scan things. All of these things that when I look at them now, they're quite old fashioned now, but at the time it was like, wow, this is incredible. And the world has moved forward. And I think even when it comes down to delivery routes, the Royal Mail delivery routes, they were mapped out, and we would go out and kind of just make the route up ourselves based on the knowledge we had. We used to put packages in the back of the vans and snake them around in an order and write the number on them of the delivery drop. And if you went around a corner too fast, all the packages would mix up, and then you'd have to try and resort them again. Whereas when I got to the Amazon level of delivery, like particularly in the recent years before I left, the devices are smart. It builds the routes based on knowledge. And if the driver's out delivering a package and they know a shortcut that the system's not telling them to do, they can put it into the system, and the system learns from that knowledge. So the routes are smart. And you think now, like when you used to buy, if you bought a car 5 years ago, it had to have sat nav. You're adamant, it's got to have sat nav in it. I need guidance. Now, who uses the sat nav in their car? I couldn't care less, because everyone plugs their phones in, don't they? And they use whatever they use on their phones. So navigation now is super, super smart. Now, we can see exactly the fastest routes. It can be reactive to traffic, any events that occur. You get options of routes you want to take on most of the apps now when you type them in. You can avoid tolls, you can avoid narrow lanes. So I think that the technology coming in that kind of industry is rapid. Super, super rapid. I mean, there's even rumors now that Amazon are moving to drones, and they'll be delivering things through the air. I mean, this is back to the future stuff, isn't it? It's incredible.
It definitely is. It keeps advancing. It must have been so much fun for you. I can only imagine to experience as you were coming up through your career, and very manual, placing it in the slots, and then going into Amazon, which is all about efficiency and lean and process improvement, right? Everything's just dialed in, and now they have robots on their floors that assist the humans, right? And it's just
So when I joined Amazon, I used to do an association week where you go in and you do the role of a frontline associate to learn what it was like. And I remember walking up and down these aisles in these huge warehouses where the lights would come on as you walked down the aisle. They were that vast. And, you wouldn't see people for 3 days. Like, you just bump into them randomly down an aisle somewhere. And you would walk around collecting the items that the customer had ordered, and you'd place them in a tote. And the amount of walking you did was immense, because these warehouses were huge. And then in more recent years now, the person who's doing the picking doesn't do any walking anymore. There's robots that bring the stacks of items to the individual, and it tells them what pigeonhole to take the items from. I mean, this is absolutely remarkable. And you think about it from an efficiency perspective, in that kind of environment, you're not asking people to work any harder. So you're not saying to somebody, you haven't been working fast enough, you've now got to go fast, I want more. You're saying to people, the biggest waste in that whole process was the walking vast distances up and down. So what are we going to do to make you more efficient? We're going to remove that walking and replace it with additional time where you can be picking items. And the way you do that is bringing the items to the individual, and the individual doesn't move. So you're not replacing that person's job. You're not making them go work harder and faster. You're just removing the waste and replacing it with value for the customer.
Yeah, fascinating. And that's really cool. So let's talk a little bit about that from like a data perspective, because there it was like you're looking at the process and you see the waste in that case was time, because there was a lot of walking in there that was non-value added activity, right? You're walking to get it and so forth. What are your thoughts on how data is collected and leveraged into the lean and the transformation process?
Yeah, so back in the day when I first started, it was all manual collection. It was, me with a clipboard standing there observing people, writing down how long it took to do each task. And again, that drove variation, because everyone's perception of what someone was doing was slightly different. So unless you did all of the data capture yourself, you could get variation in your data. And then, I fast forward 10, 15 years, and I've been in organizations that are super data rich. They are so many dashboards and data capture points that effectively you get the opposite problem. You come sort of paralyzed because there's so much data. And in some scenarios, you can pick the same metric, but from a different source, and you get a different version of the truth. I think the politicians use stuff like this because it helps them paint the story that they want to paint. So if I think about now, organizations that I'm going into now supporting with Ever So Lean, many of these are using AI to sort the data, to analyze the data for them. And that's wonderful that we can do that. I mean, it's instant. It meets that demand culture that we're in. The problem I see with it is we need to understand what that data is telling us, and AI can make mistakes in that field. We all know that it chucks out some red herrings every now and then. So what I find most recently is I spend a lot of my time coaching people on how to understand data rather than on what tool to use to analyze it. I'm teaching them what is that telling me when it comes out, so I can spot those red herrings. And then you can use things like AI then to sort of guide you upon the next step. Where am I going to now? What's the next step I need to do? Now I have that understanding.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you bring up, Matt, because without your knowledge or someone's equivalent knowledge of lean and process improvement, if you're just looking at a sea of data, because there's, like you said, there's so much data out there in a lot of the more advanced technology organizations and manufacturing and so forth. And if you're just looking at data and you don't know how to process the data or how to tell AI how to look at the data, you're just going to get back all sorts of stuff. And like you said, like a politician, you can just, well, I like that answer best, so I'm going to go down that path.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you can get in trouble. How have you felt that your interactions with companies and people have evolved, like in the last 5 years with all these technology changes and so forth? Are you spending more time teaching people about lean, or just how have things changed in your world as things become more digitized and more AI friendly these days?
Yeah, I think people tend to be now less focused on wanting to learn tools and methods. And I think there's a much more of a demand for the human side, understanding people. How do I manage change? How do I take people with me? Because they can get the answers for the tools and the methods from AI or Google or wherever they want to go and get it from. Even textbooks, if you want to go back in time, there's plenty of textbooks out there that tell you how to use the tools. But the people side really does come from lived experience. And a lot of people, because of that demand culture, they don't want to wait 10 years and go through all of the bad experiences before they can start to see results. They want to know now. And I think the lived experience that comes with someone like myself is a massive leap forward for them, because we can engage people straight away and take them on the journey. It's much harder to re-engage people if you've done it wrong in the first place and not engaged them properly, because then there's suddenly this barrier there that sort of says, didn't work last time, it's not going to work this time. So I think a lot of my time now is spent more on the human side of change than on the methods and the tools. There's still a demand for that, but the human side is definitely, for me, a massive piece of it now.
Yeah, that's such an important point. And as we wrap up, Matt, I want to make sure people know how to contact you as well, because the human side is really important. Humans with experience like you have a lot of value to offer that AI can't figure out on its own, because it's not human, right? And humans are messy, ugly. We don't make perfect processes. We're not robots. So I really, how can people get a hold of you or your organization if they're interested in learning more about how they can continuously improve their operations and transform?
Well, I'm a serial poster on LinkedIn, so they can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Matt Sims, 1M in Sims, and my smiley face will pop up. Alternatively, they can head to eversolean.com, which is my website. And on there's loads of free resources, free tools, templates and stuff that people can use. There's some videos that teach people how to use the tools. So if people are just looking to understand a bit more about continuous improvement, or even dip their toe in the water for a first contact, there's loads of free stuff on there that people can grab hold of.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Matt. And we're going to include that in the show notes as well, down below this when people are watching it on LinkedIn or on YouTube or whatever it may be. And if they're listening now, hopefully they heard that, eversolean.com, and Matt Sims with 1M on LinkedIn, and you're all over there. I've seen you there. I think that's where we originally connected.
It was, yeah. Yeah,
it's great. Well, I really appreciate your time, your insights, everything, Matt. Thank you so much for being here.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me.